That moment when a teenager gets their autism diagnosis and instead of relief, they seem more confused than ever. This confusion is actually completely normal. So research by Dr. William Mandy at UCL showed that most autistic people aren't diagnosed until well into secondary school, and 75% of them had already been noticed as having some difficulties by the age of 5. For loads of our kids, that amounts to nearly a decade of trying to figure themselves out without the right framework. Here's what Dr. Mandy's research actually shows us about late diagnosed teens. They're not just getting a diagnosis, they're rewriting their entire life story. So for years, they've explained their struggles as, I'm difficult, or I'm too sensitive, or I'm not trying hard enough. Now, suddenly there's this completely different framework for explaining everything they've experienced. This isn't just confusion, it's like a whole identity earthquake. Their brain is literally reorganizing their understanding of every difficult moment, every meltdown, every time they felt different. No wonder they're overwhelmed. The confusion needs direction, not solutions. Here are some questions that actually help teens when navigating this identity shift. What's one thing you used to blame yourself for that now makes sense? This helps them to start reframing their history without you actually doing it for them. Which parts of your old self do you want to keep, and which were just survival strategies? This is going to give them permission to separate their authentic self from their masking self and their coping mechanisms. Do you want to tell people about your autism, and if so, how? This acknowledges that disclosure is entirely their choice and puts them in control. Give them explicit permission to explore without judgment. You can say things like, you can spend some time researching autism, watch some videos, read about it. You don't have to relate to everything you find. You get to decide what fits for you. You can normalize rejecting parts of the narrative. This is important too. You can say things like, you don't have to embrace every aspect of autism identity. You can say, some things might not feel relevant to your experience, and that is completely fine. You can validate the anger they might be feeling directly by saying things like, it's okay to feel angry about getting diagnosed late, and it's okay to feel frustrated that no one knew about this earlier. Don't try and fix these emotions for them, just acknowledge that they exist. They're an important part of the process. Help them to identify their false failures. So ask things like, can you think of a time when you were told you weren't trying hard enough, when actually your brain was just working differently? This will help to reframe past struggles without minimizing them. You can support their accommodation decisions. Instead of telling them what they need, ask, what support do you actually want, and what do you think you should want? This nuance can be an interesting one to explore. You can let them experiment with what helps. You can also do things like creating masking-free zones if that feels safe and comfortable for them. You can say things like, in this space, you don't have to perform at being neurotypical. What does it feel like when you're not trying to seem normal? Naming and narrating what might be happening in their brain can help them start to make sense of it. So you can say things like, your mind is reorganizing your entire life story right now. Or things like, of course you're confused. You're essentially learning who you really are for the first time. Questioning whether you're really autistic is incredibly common after late diagnosis. Acknowledge that. It doesn't mean that the diagnosis is wrong. It just means that they're processing something really huge and it needs exploring and processing. You can help to give them language for the in-between. Teach them to say things like, I'm still figuring out what being autistic means for me when people ask about the diagnosis. Dr. Mandy's research shows us that the post-diagnosis period is critical, but this identity work is going to take months, not weeks. The teens who get the best support are those whose adults understand that they're not fixing anything, they're supporting a process of self-discovery. The goal isn't to make the teen comfortable with being autistic immediately. It's about making it safe for them to explore what autism means for them in their specific life. When we give our newly diagnosed autistic teens permission to be confused, to reject parts of the autism narratives that don't fit, and to take their time figuring out their identity, we create space for authentic self-understanding. Late diagnosis creates identity confusion, but with the right support, this confusion can become a journey of self-discovery. That overwhelm that your teenager is experiencing, it is not a problem to solve, it's a process to support. By the way, if you are an adult watching this and you are identifying hard, all of it applies to you too. This is a process that I, as a very late diagnosed autistic adult, found myself going through alongside my autistic teenage daughters. It's never too late to be confused about who you are. I quite often get asked about my videos on various topics saying, you just talked about children, what about adults too? And honestly, so much of what I talk about can apply to adults. I just happen to be someone who specialises in children and young people. But yeah, you too, me too. Late diagnosis is a challenging and exciting journey of self-discovery. So what have you found has helped in the weeks following diagnosis, either yourself or someone you're supporting? It'd be great if you could share your experiences in the comments so we can all learn from each other and feel a bit of solidarity.